Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And as I just said to Debbie, my esteemed guest, I've been waiting all week for this conversation. It is definitely one for me that is quite thought-provoking. But before we do anything, let me press live on our Instagram page so that we can greet our guests there. And the ones on YouTube will just automatically join. So welcome everyone from wherever you are watching us from today. Debbie's all the way from Houston, Texas, as I've heard, where I suppose lift off for NASA happens. So we're
Yes.
so grateful to have you here. Please say hello before I go and read your bio, and I will introduce the topic after you've said hello.
Yes, I'm super excited to be here with you guys and spend this morning just talking about leadership and trust and structure and all those wonderful things. So we're going to get to dive in and have some fun.
Yeah, so I'm going to just reiterate the topic of today is the architecture of trust and covering why trust breaks down. How do we build it, excuse me, and what it takes to create stronger, healthier connections. Now, we may think that this is only in the context of our world of work, but I want us to think quite broadly today, if that's okay, Debbie, across the board, whether it is with our adolescent kids. I'm going to put up my hand and then when trust feels like it's broken the plot, then I don't respond as a parent at times. I react, right? Which breaks down trust even further. That's just one example. And as I said to Debbie, what you see is what you get. There's no pretense here. We show up as we are. So we're going to have a real, raw conversation. A little bit about Debbie. The shortest bio I've ever had to read. And for me, I'm quite impressed by that because it's not so much what's written, but it's the walking the talk that is more important. So I'm looking forward to hear. She's the founder and CEO of Anchor Point and the creator of the Architecture of Trust, a management discipline that shows leaders how organizational structure drives trust, decision speed, and execution performance. So there's always a story attached to why we end up living a particular purpose or pathway that we've taken on. Do you want to start there before we dig into the actual meat around the topic of today?
I can, that's no problem. We all have interesting journeys, and all of our journeys have highs and lows. And so mine's no different than anybody else's.
Yeah.
The short version is if we look back in my life, I had as a teenager set some plans for my life. And one of them was I wanted to be a young grandma. Okay. So I went to college and got my engineering degree, but I met a guy, fell in love, got married. And the goal was I need to have children so I can get to grandchildren one day, right? And as life would have it, infertility became the name of the game for us
Mhm.
for many, many years. Eventually, we did get pregnant. We thought we were pregnant with twins. My body started to miscarry, and when we ended up in the high risk doctor, we found out we were carrying quadruplets, so 4 children, and that began us a kind of trust walk of learning to make it to the next day. Those boys, we wanted to get them to 30 weeks in the pregnancy. We got to 26 weeks and my water broke and they put me in the hospital, and I was going to stay as long as I could, still trying to get to the 30 weeks. And the next day, one of the babies started to push their way out and said, I'm coming. And the doctor told me I couldn't just forget about this and like stop all this, that I had to deliver the baby. And unfortunately, medical technology at that time was not as good as it is now, and they could not save that baby. So that baby was placed in my arms as they slowly just took their last few breaths, and they passed on into eternity. And then the question became, would the other three make it?
Mhm.
And I got very, very sick, and I had to deliver those boys also. And I held them and rocked them and loved them until they all drifted into eternity. And with that came this journey of learning to give up the question of why, because I wasn't going to get a satisfactory answer to the question why,
Mhm.
that would stop my pain or bring my voice back or anything like that. And I had to learn to ask the question, how do I survive? And that came down to taking my next best step. And then as I got better, how do I thrive? Because I wanted my
Yeah.
life experiences and everything to matter and to impact people. And I knew eternity was long and our time here was short. And so if I wanted to leave a legacy, I had to be intentional about living the legacy. And so that started me on a journey of being very strategic of what I would spend my time on. Ultimately, that had us adopt 9 children from hard backgrounds. And then
Wow.
we God planted the seed in my head that I ought to start a nonprofit. Well, I don't know anything about nonprofits, but I'm like, okay. And so I started and I would just do the next best thing, the next best thing, the next best thing over and over again. And I learned to build the systems and the structure and everything to create an organization that impacts literally thousands of people each year and, is a multi-million dollar organization that, requires a lot of trust in the structure for us to be successful. As the number of people on the team have increased, the number of people we impact, the complexity increases. And as that has done that, what has happened is over the last couple of years, I've been able to start coaching more and helping others learn how to build the systems that I just spent my life building over the last 16 years. And these are the truth is, all of this stuff is just nuggets of wisdom that I've had to learn both in my relational life and my parenting life and my work life. And they're just nuggets that I go, if you can grasp these now while you're much younger than me, oh my gosh, your life is going to be, you're going to soar way higher than me in your ability to do things and accomplish things and impact people. And that is what I want for people. And that is why we're talking about this subject today.
Firstly, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for sharing so vulnerably something that happened a long time ago, but I'm sure there may still be some visceral feelings about it. And one's grief around losses is not a linear experience, and sometimes some of those grief moments will still show up, right? And it's not undermining the pain, the fact that you were initially in survival and later on decided, well, how do I take this pain in
Mhm.
pursuit of a greater purpose?
Yeah.
And as you know, we talk about this segment as shifting from the grudge state. It becomes that hero's journey. And I reframe it for us ladies as the shero's journey. How did you step into that hero's journey, knowing you're going into an unknown territory? You were a mom of then, well, still a mom of 4 kids at the time, but one passed. And
Mhm.
the other 3, they all survived, Debbie?
No, they all passed away. So I
They
lost all the boys that day. And
Oh,
so,
no, I heard wrong. I apologize.
yeah, no, that's fine. They were, the truth of the matter is their lungs just weren't developed enough to be able to be outside
Mhm.
the room, and medical technology could not save them at the time. And so they were just placed in my arms, and I loved them and rocked them and held them until they drifted into eternity. And we sat at the end of the day with empty arms and broken hearts. And
Yes, of
could
course.
yeah, and I couldn't understand. I sat there and I'm like, well, if I just had the answer to why, this would I would feel better. I could figure my way. And the truth of
Yes.
the matter is no answer to why this side of eternity will ever satisfy. And so, that
Yeah,
becomes a very inward journey, and it
very
pulls us
much.
away from people, and it actually sabotages us from moving forward. But
Yeah,
the idea of
yeah,
switching that to how do I survive means I am taking a positive step, the next thing, best thing I can think of. And I just do that over and over and over again. And that really is the grief journey, is learning to do that and then learning to get to that question of how can I thrive?
yeah.
Because nothing we go through, um, it can all be used to help and to impact
Sure,
others,
sure.
as we move to that, gratitude kind of stage. And, I look
Mm.
back on that time and yeah, it was hard, but I'm going, I learned a lot, and I'll be with
Yes.
my boys in eternity, and that's
Mm.
not really gonna be that long from now. And so what can I do now here
Wow,
to
Debbie.
impact? So
I'm just in awe of the grace you're sitting with as you share the story, you know. And I
Mhm.
mean, I completely again humbly apologize. I didn't hear that you lost all of them. So
That's
Mike would humbly apologize for not listening with intent there. The other thing I want to ask you is in that time, it must have been feeling lonely and isolating because the wisdom and the insight is not there in those moments. There's pain, there's suffering, there's turmoil, there's lack of trust, lack of belief, you know, and one's faith could be questioned in
mhm.
those moments because the why me shifts
Yeah.
us into I'm a victim of this experience. So,
Mhm.
how did you bring yourself back, and who was walking alongside you, beside your husband, and
Mhm.
whoever else was in that circle of trust, I want to call it, that
Mhm.
you gathered in those moments of of trauma, of pain?
Yeah, well, I would say, when we were in the hospital and that night, that very first night when everybody kinda goes home, or whatever, and everything's kinda calmed
Yeah.
down, it's me and God at that point. And we're I'm having a conversation with
Mm,
him, and I'm like, "I need the answer to why, because I'm
mm,
a doer. I gotta get things done, and I gotta I wanna figure out how to control my environment, to figure my way, and
mhm,
I'm sitting there going, "How do I figure my way through this? This is really hard. I don't know how
mhm,
to do this. I've never done this before. How do I figure my way?" And everything I could think of just wasn't the right answer, and the only thing I could come down to was, "You know what? I'm just gonna have to trust God with this." There's and I so I then God and I started having this conversation. I'm like, "Well, tell me the reason for why. Why is this? Why do I why is this?" And he just was like, "I need you to give that up." And for whatever reason, I finally relented, and I did it that night. I think the reason that I drifted into that easier maybe than other people do after a big tragic loss is because the whole journey of the pregnancy was so high risk, and
yeah.
every day was a miracle to make it to the next day. And so we
Mm,
just lived in gratitude to make it to the next day and to make it to the next day and we already were completely out of control. I didn't know how to figure anything, and I'm just like,
mm,
"Okay, what do I do next?" And so I think that that's why I landed where I landed that night in the hospital, because here was my deepest desire. Definitely would I want my boys here and all that good stuff, yes. But my deepest desire sitting in the tragedy is I'm, like, in my late 20s, and I'm like, "I don't wanna be stuck. I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to be 30 years from now and still carrying around all these heavy emotions
sure.
and trapped." I mean, I know people my boys would be 32 years old today, and I know people that are still stuck that lost children
Mm,
30 plus years
mm,
ago, and I'm, like, going, "To me, for me personally, that would have been wasting my life. It is not what my boys would want. It's not what God would want. It's not what I want." And so I just fought hard to go, how can I figure my way through this? What do I need? And those questions that I learned to ask, I still ask today, even as a CEO, even as a mom, all these things.
mm,
I ask
mm,
the same questions. How do I survive? How do I thrive? How do I survive? How do I thrive? Give up the why. I'm not going to get the answer to that. Give that one up. And, they have served me so well. And I think the things that we take and we offer to God and let Him direct our paths is the way through. But I did have a very supportive husband. We had to
mhm,
learn how to work together because a lot of times after a grief such as this, families
yes,
divorce, and
yes.
they divorce because communication breaks down. And it's because I might be doing okay that day and he might be struggling that day. And so
Sure.
we can't figure out how to communicate. And then it swaps and he's doing okay and I'm struggling. And so we had to learn to fight that the enemy is not us. The enemy is outside of us, and that we had to stay connected as a team. And we had great people that came alongside of us. And I just think, it is pretty amazing that my body wakes up each day and I can breathe and I can
Oh,
live and I
you're
do.
just such a delight, Debbie. For those that have joined us now on Instagram and YouTube, we're talking about trust, and we may have perceived it to be in the organizational context, but just for those that only joined, we just discovered this started 32 years ago when Debbie lost her quadruplet sons. Were they all sons? All
Yes.
boys?
Yeah.
All her boys. And she decided to ask some very tough questions to the creator, source. She did not go and blame and become a victim of her circumstances. She really asked questions and from source directly. And I'm so inspired because you decided in that moment to listen to
Mhm,
God's response, because
mhm.
we can't, in the moments of grief, we're blinded. We are sitting with rage and that inner turmoil, and it's really hard to be led with conviction of your faith in those moments. So I want to
Mhm.
applaud you for leading with that insight, that wisdom. Now, if I may just dig a little bit deeper to your earlier life as a young lady and the
Mhm,
home that you were raised in,
mhm.
and I'll tell you why I'm directing the question there is, do you come from a faith-based home? Was this a great influence on you, and why you
Yeah.
tied to your conviction around your faith to overcome this
Mhm,
grief?
mhm. Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. So my parents are baby Christians at best, and
Mm,
they, I ended up in the church system because my parents wanted me to be raised with good morals,
mm,
okay? And so they would take me or drop me off and everything, and I am just such a determined little kid that I loved being in church and I just soaked it all in. And then even when I became a teenager and could drive, that's where I drove myself. And so I
amazing.
just became very set in that. And even in college, where I had a very good friend and we both grew up in the church together, and her parents
Mm,
came from a very strong background. She kind of went AWOL for a while when we got to college, and I just stuck in there and stayed because it was my choice, and it was
mm,
me leaning into that. Does that mean I've never doubted, and stuff like that? No, that's not true. I mean,
sure.
I've struggled with that, but it was very easy for me to lean into that. I have no idea why, other than I just fell in love and I was like, this is it. And so that is where that faith journey started, but it came because my parents dropped me off and,
Wow.
and everything,
So respect to mom and dad, right? Because not everyone has such a solid foundation being raised with good, solid faith-based values and
Mhm.
principles and morals. And I guess that in the moments of being in the darkness, of going into the abyss of the challenge, and this goes to everyone listening, the obstacle, the problems that we experience in our lives, if you don't have that as the foundation, we do tend to go to things that may not yield the best outcome for us. Now, let me ask you, if I may probe a little bit just in terms of your husband, because it was beautiful partnership that
Mhm.
held the two of you together. What was his faith foundation like? Similar or not?
No,
And
he
have
was
you supported him in?
yeah, so he was raised in a very, strong Christian family, and they
Mm,
were very committed, grandparents all the way down, and so he's he's been a great addition as we've gotten together over the years, is that he really has helped me even grow in my walk and us as a couple and what we should look like as a marriage couple raising children. And so he's been part of that journey. And it's been a lot of fun. But I would say, you know, the question that comes for those of us who face difficult things, and we will all face difficult things. I mean, it's really interesting that we walk through this world and we think, oh, we're not going to run into any challenging things. And the truth of the matter is, whether you're reading scripture or you're just looking at people's lives, it says there's going to be challenges.
Of
Okay. And
course, of
so
course.
when there is a challenge, the question is, how do you and I mean, most of the times we don't get to walk away from what life throws at us. We have to
Yes,
walk through it. And when we
yes.
have to walk through it, the question is, the journey will go one way depending on how my mindset is set. And the
Mhm.
journey can turn out very differently if my mindset is set. So if I go through something and go, okay, I know this is hard. I know this isn't fair. I know these things, but I
Mhm.
know that there's probably something I can learn. I can look toward eternity. I can look to this. I mean, I sat in that hospital room that night going, how am I going to get through this? I thought of everything I could possibly try. Okay. And I ultimately landed on I had to trust God. I was like, I could try and figure this out on my own, but obviously I hadn't figured it out so far. My boys would be here. And, and I could be mad at the world. I could be angry. I could go
Sure.
drink. I could do drugs. I could do all these things. But ultimately, this is where good friends and wise people sit is to go think about like if you start that journey, where does that land? Where does that end? And is the ending you want? And
Mm.
I was like, no, I don't. I want to live. I want to smile. I want to laugh. I want to have joy. And I had to fight for it. And it was
Sure.
worth fighting for.
So, I latch onto words and things that people say. So that's why this can never be rehearsed with questions because I'm in this moment with you and I'm almost reliving it and we're talking through it together. So we spoke mindset. You need to have the right mindset because we are in our heads. But you
Yep.
also alluded to being heartbroken,
Mhm.
right? So when our heart is broken, our spirit, our soul feels impacted. So how do we bring that together to become more cohesive where we're operating from, I don't want to call it this brokenness,
Mhm.
but yet there's a wholesomeness because we're leading with faith and we're listening to God's conviction to say there's a greater pursuit and purpose in the pain. How did
Mhm.
you bring that into coherence? The heart set, the soul set, and the mindset.
Sure. Yeah. So I knew what absolute truth was. So I had that. That was good. Okay. And then
Mm-hmm.
now it's a matter of how do I move through life? Okay. So I remember everything. It was like from the moment the first child was born, it was like everything stopped, right? And everything is going in slow motion. And even weeks afterwards, I'm like, my whole life is stopped. It's like it's this slow
Mm-hmm.
motion journey. But interestingly enough, I know outside that bubble, life is still going on. And I'm
Yeah.
like, everything should have stopped. This was terrible, but life is still going, right? And so, what I tell people is as you learn to walk through a very challenging time, we need to have a ton of grace with each other. And,
Mm-hmm.
I really consider after a loss like that, it is at least a year or two of figuring out what my new normal looks like because I have to go through and experience a full circle of life, a year,
Yeah.
because, like, my boys were born on April 1st of '95, and, the next big thing after that in the United States for sure is Mother's Day,
Oh
and
God.
I'm like I'm sitting in a church service, and they go, "Okay, who just had the most recent babies? I want you to stand up." And I'm like, "What do I stand up? Do I not stand up?" I looked at my husband and I said, "I'll be in the lobby." because I can't deal with this today.
Sure, sure.
So I'm like, I'm heading to the lobby. So I had to figure out how to take care of myself, right? And to
Mm.
know that it's okay if I don't sit through that service.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and he needs to have grace with me that I just can't handle that right then. It just was too raw, right? And so I just removed myself. And I think we have to learn to do the good things that we need to do for ourselves to take
Mm.
care of our bodies and our minds and our hearts and all this stuff. And we have to go through that first year. The second year through, after a huge major issue, thing like that, is now you're going, okay, now it's my second Mother's Day. I'm a little bit better. Maybe I
Yeah.
can sit through the church service, maybe whatever. But we know through research that our body keeps the score, right? And when our body keeps the score, I'm 32 years later. I can tell you that the week before April 1st, I might get cranky. And I'm
Of
like, "Why
course.
am I cranky?" And I'm like, "What am I upset about?" And then it'll dawn on me, "Oh, it's April 1st,"
That time.
and my body is still trying to work through some of that. So I have to work on my body too, to help my body understand it's okay. We're
Mm.
safe. There's no major trauma coming on April 1st. We're gonna be okay. And so I have to be wise enough to do some of that type of work on myself. And a lot of us just don't know that we can do that. And
Sure.
so having wise people that will teach us those things. And then, when I ask the question of how do I thrive, I'm I am asking God, I'm like, you're a redeemer of stories.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so here is my story. You redeem it and show me what
Beautiful.
you want me to do to that. So one of the best ways that as I get healthier is I can begin to reach back and help other people who are beginning that journey learn how to walk it, right? Because I don't have to be completed. I just need to be a little further ahead on the journey, right?
Ah,
And so I just began to do that and to serve people who had lost children and are grieving and leading grief groups and doing all these types of things to help people walk their journey. And when you and I begin to do that, then it heals part of us also as we go through that over and over again. And so I just have been very, very diligent over the years to try and figure out how to get me the healthiest I could be to walk through it. And giving my story away, giving my life away, serving has been one of the most powerful ways to do that because the things that we build for ourselves generally don't last. The things we
I
build for
know.
last, and
Oh,
that
man.
is where the most significant stuff is. So,
Debbie, you have a beautiful heart and soul, and we are so privileged to have you here share this testimony. But more than the testimony, it is understanding that there has to be radical acceptance of life's obstacles and challenges and understanding the impermanence of it. And more
mhm,
than the impermanence is how do I serve from that
mhm,
positioning? How do I
yeah.
serve and cultivate a legacy, not for me, but for others that I leave behind, to carry this torch and become that torchbearer and illuminate the lives of others through their pain and their suffering. So I just want to acknowledge that part and then shift the conversation outside of the self and then move to the service part, because your service has been way beyond just others that you serve through their losses. You've adopted.
Mhm.
You said 9 children. Let me just check my listening. Was it
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah. So 9. So 4 that we lost and then 9, so that's 13 total. Yeah. Mhm.
And so there, you've given hope
Mhm.
to children who might not have had the opportunity to have a beautiful home, a safe, faith-based home, a place
Mhm.
where they can feel trust.
Mhm.
And that is a monumental um, reclamation of whatever it is that you went through, that this was the pursuit of the biggest service, the greater purpose. Those
Mhm.
9 children today and the NGO environment, tell me their influence, their role. What's happened in their lives?
Well, sure. I will tell you. Well, first of all of them come from trauma backgrounds. Okay. And so,
Mhm. Yes, I get,
so there's not a lot of calm moments as we've gone through the years.
of course.
The oldest is 34 and the youngest will be 22 this year. And they have now, remember, you need to remember what was my desire as a child? My desire as a child was to be a young grandma, right?
Yes, yes.
And the way I got there was not the way I thought it would be, right? But now I'm
Mhm.
a grandma of 15, so that's exciting. And
Amazing.
yeah, and those kids give me lots of energy. But for my children, um,
Mhm.
the journey for us, it's a lot of work to become a blended family, and then to be a blended family three times over is is quite a lot. It's
Massive.
interesting. But what we do know is that we understand what it means to be committed to each other because we are
Mhm.
choosing each other. And, one of the things that when I train families that are interested in adoption, I am like, look, when you go into this with the thought that this is forever. There's no getting out of this.
Sure.
Just like if it's your biological child, because it is gonna be very hard and it's gonna be very good. But it's
Mhm.
going to be hard. There are gonna be really hard times. And so, you know, there were lots of hard times, and I've had children that, have propensities toward addictions, and have gotten in that in their adult years. And we've had to walk alongside them for numerous years, to see them make it to the other side. But I would go, if these children wouldn't be with us, maybe they wouldn't even be here today because life would have beaten them up and they would have died or whatever. And so, no matter our current circumstances, God is writing a good story and He's using them in different ways. And so, I love the fact that, some of them are doing very well. And that makes me excited, and they have beautiful families, and others are struggling with addictions but have made their way or working their way through them. And, I'm amazed at these children's resilience after being treated poorly through the years by people. And I just go, my job as a parent is to plant positive seeds in them, leave them a bridge to Jesus, and to see their value and the core goodness that's in them, and to just continue to draw that out of them because they have the ability with their circumstances as they went through life to impact a lot of people that I could never reach. And so I go, this is why this journey's hard, but it's good. And we had to learn to love each other and learn to commit to stay with each other. And it's been an absolutely wonderful growing experience for us as a couple and people to learn to be the parents that we need to be for these kids. And it's a privilege. It really is a privilege to walk alongside them in life. And the grandbabies are a bonus. So
What I'm hearing you say is that, look, it's tough, even as a parent with my flesh and blood. At
Mhm.
times I'm going grayer than what I already am, as you can see, and I want to pull out my hair. And sometimes, as a single mom, I want to give up. And, it's hard. Parenting in and of itself is hard, even with your own flesh and blood. And when it's not your own flesh and blood, you are taking on that assignment and you saying, I'll take it with all that comes with it. And rightfully so, the core wounds, whether it's the father wound, the mother wound, the inner child wounds, those are going to come with it, because even in my own kids, coming now from a single mom home, there will be core wounds that they have to go through. And you
Mhm.
see that, and it's hard. And you also see a lot of these things that are generational cycle trauma
Mhm.
that is just embedded in there within them,
Mhm.
and you can't accelerate their healing, but you can most certainly hold that sacred space. So again, I would love to acknowledge you because
Mm,
what you are doing is not just fostering children and grandchildren, you've broken the generational curse that
mhm.
exists within those homes. And that is something that I think you and your husband and every other person that is walking alongside you in holding this space is cultivating your highest abode in paradise. And so I'm sure your four sons and equally everyone else will be waiting in paradise for that beautiful abode, just to acknowledge and give you life after death that will be one that is even more beautiful than what you have now. So I wanted to acknowledge that for you,
Yeah, thank you.
Debbie.
Well, and we're glad. I mean, it has been a hard journey, but it has been a wonderful journey because we
Yeah.
are so much better people, and parents, and the kids have taught us so much, and so it is such a
Mhm.
privilege, even when hard, to be in those spaces, and to watch them become the people that they need to be. And that, when we keep that kind of attitude, and have that kind of grace and grit and
Yes.
genuineness with them, we can see amazing things. And, that's no different than the ministry that we run, is that we deal with these same types of people all the time, and
Mhm.
helping them see the hope, grab onto it, and become the people that they need to be gets me excited. So I get excited to be able to do that.
And I applaud that because every relationship is a mirror back to us. And when
Mhm.
it is our flesh and blood, it's even harder to accept because we're seeing some of our own not so great attributes and characteristics come through. And so now, when it's not your own flesh and blood and you're seeing that, it must be monumentally difficult to deal with that. But with that being said,
Mhm.
I want to changed gears and direction in this conversation, because what we told our audience is, what does this leadership look like in an organizational context, in a
Mhm.
company, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're working in an environment. And leadership is not just leadership within a professional context.
Mhm.
Knowing what we know about core wounds and trauma and generational curses that does carry forward, how relevant is that, that creates that unsafe feeling or mistrust, and we don't lead effectively in our work context? How have you seen that play out?
Yeah. Okay. So I love this because this kind of takes it all to the next level. Okay. Because I go, if you and I can get this right, it's going to save us a lot of trouble. Okay. So I go, whatever saves me a lot of trouble, I am big into. All right. But here's the deal. Um, we can all acknowledge and agree that we all bring our junk into everything that we go into. And we bring our good stuff, we bring our bad stuff, we bring it all, right? And so it's all coming in there. So everybody else has their stuff too. So when we're thinking about it from a business perspective, and this even goes in our families too, but in a business perspective, when trust breaks down, we almost always blame people. Okay. And my concept
Debbie,
behind, yes.
Debbie, one moment. You've gone a bit quieter in terms of your audio, so I'm not hearing very well. I just want to see if I can also switch up, because I'm not hearing and I want to capture everything that you're saying. Let's see if I increase on my volume. My volume's on maximum, so I'm not sure. But I also know there's a kettle on in my kitchen, so that's contributing to not making me hear comfortably. So I've just asked for the kettle to go off so I can hear properly.
Is this better?
Yes, I can hear a little bit better now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So when we think about like business, we have to
Yes.
understand that we bring all of our stuff. Everybody else brings all their stuff, good or bad. And we have to understand that you put all that together to work together, and you got all these things that can go on, all these dynamics that happen. And here's what we have to understand: we have to understand that when trust breaks down in our organizations, we almost, as leaders, always blame people. Okay. And when we blame people, we create a huge problem for us. Okay. Because most of the people that we hire, think about it, we don't hire bad people. We hire good people. But so how did they become bad so quickly? And so the architecture of trust, which is the concept that I've developed, learns to ask a different question. Okay. The question you and I need to ask as leaders is, what structure in my organization made this outcome likely? How did I structure my organization that allowed this to happen? So, this shift, when we change this and we go, it's not the person, there's something going on. And now I can take this, if I can remove the emotions, right? If I can go, okay, this isn't an emotional thing. Let me come over here and go, okay, this shifts the conversation from a blame game to a design situation. And what we know is that in order for us to know what we really trust, the pressure must go up. And then what comes out teaches us what we trust. Okay. So, whether in marriage, leadership, family, friends, many of the frustrations we experience are not simply personal failures. They are the result of broken structure, unclear expectations, inconsistent communication, and emotional exhaustion that have accumulated over time. Trust is not simply an emotion, it is an architecture. So it is how we build it. So this is what we have to start working on. Okay. So we're going to go from who's wrong to what structure is producing that behavior. All right. And I'll just give you a great example. In our organization, we have goals that we're trying to reach. And part of my leadership team is assigned certain goals. And this particular one um, was about a space analysis. Okay. And this staff member, I thought, had clearly communicated what we were doing and what I needed, and that she would bring me back a report and a recommendation, and we would make a decision together, and then we would move together. Okay. She, in her mind, said, I need to do this and I got to get this other thing done with it. Da, 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 da. So she went and implemented all of it. Now, that's fine, but it wasn't exactly right. And I then had board members calling me with issues. And I'm like going, I didn't even know it happened yet because she had just done it. And so if I look at that, I could say, oh, that's a bad person. She was being manipulative. She did this, she did that, da, da, da. As a leader, those are the thoughts that could come to mind. But I also could then say, okay, what happened here? Why did this go down? And the truth of the matter is that I did not clearly communicate the fact that I wanted a written recommendation to come back and for us to make the decision together. And that was not documented. And so I assumed that she would do that, right? And she didn't. And so trust could completely be broken in that situation, or I could realize that my structure, we couldn't trust it. And so what do I need to do to change my structure so that in the future she doesn't do that type of thing? And because that's not her heart, that's not her intent. She's a good person. She's a great staff person. But I did not. So in the future, so now what do? Whenever we give out goals, objectives, those type of things, we make sure that the end game, what does success look like? Success for her in that situation was to bring back a recommendation that could be reviewed, approved, and we could move together. Okay. That was not communicated. So I could default to not trusting her, or I could understand that it was my structure was not creating the ability for us to be successful. So I, in my mind, think that's the biggest shift for us as leaders, is to realize that it's not our people, it's our structure that is hurting us. And when I go there, then I feel like I can win. I can make changes. I can let the pressure go up again, and we can see if my system holds. And if my system holds, then we all learn to trust it, and we can all operate and move faster. And that is what we want. Now, I will tell you that I, as the leader, all of those things about my baggage that I bring to the table, I
Mhm.
have to be willing to work on that stuff. So
For sure.
let's look at Debbie. Debbie, uh, me, is a control freak. Okay. I love to have everything under control. But think about it.
Yes,
Why do I react that way? I react that way because 32 years ago, I was in a situation where I couldn't control losing my voice. And so
exactly.
ever since then, I've been like, if I can control it, we're going to be successful, right? And the funny thing is that this world applauds my ability to control and get things done. Okay. And
Mm.
that's fine for where we have gotten to, but it's only as good as I can show up 100%. So what
Sure.
happens, like 4 years ago, I got a leg injury that should have cost me my life, with a wound that I couldn't get healed. And when I couldn't show up 100%, we start to see where there was structure problems.
Sure.
Why?
Sure.
Because I, as the CEO, have filled all the cracks over the years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if we want to build an organization or take our organization to the next level, what got us here will not get us there. So I, as the leader, have to understand that if I operate from control and hustle, that is what the expectation is going to be of my people. Not because I said it, but because I demonstrate it and
Sure.
demand it of myself all the time. But that won't leave an organization that will last way after I'm gone. So I have to be willing to grow in those areas. And I think that self reflection as a leader is absolutely key. Guess what? Same self reflection had to happen with my kids when they're breaking down. I'm like going, why am I so mad? This is their trauma speaking. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but it feels so personal. And so I had to learn, okay, what in me is getting lit up by this child so that I
Mm.
can be fully present. Same type of thing happens in the work world. And
Yeah.
what do I have to learn to ask? How do I survive this? How do I thrive? And that is the questions that come back over and over again.
I mean, I think it's such a beautifully orchestrated architecture, excuse the pun in it, because
Yeah.
it is certainly looking at what are the systems underpinning certain behaviors or
Mhm,
belief patterns
mhm,
or the way people show up just generally. And we're all walking with our inner child. And depending on which version of that inner child, in fact, I did a live a while back with a lady that is a clinical psychologist, and I can't remember the exact term she used, but she says we're actually all innately whole as children. Our inner child was always whole, but we never had the right nurturing and parenting. So the inner parenting side, I think it was something to that effect, wasn't really the structures for the inner parent wasn't there
mhm,
with the inner child.
mhm,
So it could not tap into the prefrontal cortex, or it wasn't developed, and it couldn't operate from what I call the Einstein part of our brain. And instead of going to the Frankenstein, I think John Assaraf, I don't know if you're familiar with him. His
mhm,
name is John Assaraf. He has been on The Secret, and he talks a lot about these concepts about how the brain works.
mhm,
But we spoke mindset, we spoke heart set and soul set early on. We spoke about that being coherent. We also need to understand what are the different systems that are influencing why people are showing up the way that they do. So for you, it's really big on you as a leader to be introspective and to
mhm,
say, well, hold on, what is my role to play here? Why has this individual showed up this way? What is broken within the structure or the system that
mhm.
is not, that is perpetuating this, right? And so I feel that that is a monumental gap, but how do we bring that into awareness? Because there's also, if we bring in the psychological aspects, Maslow's hierarchy theory of needs, I think is still apt. What are
Mhm,
everyone's needs and desires? Because you've highlighted everyone's good. Everyone's a good hire. Nobody comes in innately bad. Nobody was born innately bad. I tell my kids, a bully has been bullied. Somebody who commits a crime has seen it. It's learned behavior. So those structures that underpin those behaviors, it's not necessarily their fault, but it requires awareness and moving into practicing a new way of being. So what are some of those in your architectural design that you've
Hmm.
put into play that
Hmm.
helps cultivate that trust factor
Yeah.
more meaningfully?
Yeah. Well, first, let me get this one little thing for you to kind of give you some perspective is that we have to understand that when we have broken trust, that it creates emotional drag in our organization. Okay. So, and we may not realize, but when it weakens, people begin to carry invisible emotional work that they have to do. So it shows up in things like over explaining or defending yourself or second guessing or walking on eggshells or opening old conversations over and over again, carrying resentment. All of that stuff is what I call like a hidden trust tax on your organization. And who likes to pay taxes, right? And so distrust creates emotional labor that no one talks about. Okay, which is what you're kind of hinting at. And so it is my job to make sure that we lay the foundation in our organization for healthy conversations and healthy, wanting the best for each other. If you come into my organization, one of the things I will always say is that I guarantee you somewhere along the line, I will tick you off. And it may not be intentional, but I will do it because we're just people and we all have our stuff, right? And so you have to be willing to come and say, "Hey, I need to ask you a question. I need to talk through this because you value me and I value you." I guarantee you that if you do something that drives me crazy or is off task or whatever, I am coming to you because I want us to figure our way through it. Not because I want to punish you or do any of these things. There is some breakdown going on. And so we have to fight hard for that because in organizations, as complexity goes up and the number of conversations you have to have, or everything, and especially if you're working in a ministry setting where Satan would love to just derail everything, it's going to happen in the middle of some of your structures. So it's going to be in leadership alignment, it's going to be in decision clarity, it's going to be in execution. So, what is it that we're doing to protect that environment and have a safe space that we can have real conversations? That comes because I cultivate that as a leader, but
Mm.
also it's because I live with humility. I'm open to being talked to, told hard
Mm.
things. I'm open to admitting when I'm wrong and making adjustments. And I'm not perfect, but I want to be the best leader I can be. I want to be the best mom I can be. I want to be the best friend I can be. And so I have to be open to hearing hard things to me to know that I need to own up to things. It's not unusual. I have a staff member, they call me, they want to come in and they say, "Well, you said this and it made me feel like this and da 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 da." And I'm like, "That's totally not what I meant, but okay, I see it." And I said, "I'm so sorry. That is not what I was trying to communicate. And
Yes.
so let's work through this right now. And is there things I could have done differently? Or, also, is there things on that person's side that maybe they need to adjust?" And but our goal is let's figure out how to make this work.
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
we're two people. We love our jobs. We love what we're doing and we want to be successful, but we're two different people. And so there naturally is going to be challenges, but I go, what can we do to do that? And I would tell you we definitely want to have grace, but grace doesn't replace structure. Okay,
No.
it's essential. Forgiveness is essential. Compassion is essential. But healthy relationships require healthy structure. So we do need accountability. We need, we need boundaries. We need all the clarity.
Agree.
We need all of those things. And that is what protects us as individuals in the healing process and also in the organization for it to be able to function the best that it can function.
Yeah, I think what stands out for me is that there needs to be more than just emotional intelligence. There needs to be context intelligence, social intelligence, and all of those create the right structure or ingredients
Mhm.
for the transparency that you're alluding to. There needs to be an openness and transparency. There needs to be a learning culture, an unlearning culture, because we actually have to unlearn to relearn new neural pathways, because everything is connected to stories, our past stories. And we started this conversation with where everything started for you 32 years ago, losing your 4 kids, but how a lot of that control becomes a self-sabotaging behavior, blindly so, because it becomes an adaptation that you've taken on. And we
Mhm.
do take on these adaptations, not because we wanted to rule our lives, but it's to protect ourselves, because the brain is only doing what it's needing to protect itself. So the moment it scans for that stimuli in your environment, that is why your employee perceived a
Yeah.
certain message, and it was her reality, right?
Mhm.
Because our perception is absolutely our reality, but it requires a perspective change. And
Mhm.
so the perspective change requires the right architecture. I'm going to bring it back, and
Mhm.
structures to create the climate that is conducive to say, I am safe. I trust this. There is healthy conflict. There is complexity, but in the complexity, we are co-creating what that way forward would look like.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
we are now in the last, almost at the top of the hour. We have about 3 minutes remaining, Debbie.
Mhm.
And instead of me asking you a question, I mean, is there anything that you feel called to share and give insight and more wisdom nuggets you want to share with our audience? I haven't even acknowledged people here today because I've been so immersed into this chat with you. Thank you, Suraya, Minora, Marissa, that's on Insta, and everyone else that maybe hasn't really typed anything. Those that are here on YouTube, please, where do we get hold of you, Debbie? If people want to reach out to you, or what else is there that you want to share from your very humble wisdom nuggets that you share with us?
Well, I would tell you one of the most important things in a trust environment, and is
Mhm.
often considered like a missing ingredient for how companies succeed, but also how we as families and everything that is the idea of continuity. Okay. And because we need to understand that trust is rarely built in dramatic moments, it's built through consistency. And, when continuity is broken, that is when trust begins to erode. And so we want continuity, even if it's imperfect, we're imperfect, is this continuity of you can count on me. I'm here. I'm for you. We're going to do this together. And that is what helps relationships, it helps organizations be resilient. It isn't built in the big moments, it's built in the continuity. So I would just say, kind of as a last kind of thought is we spend a lot of time trying to change people, but lasting change happens when we change the structures that shape how people relate, communicate, and trust. And healthy organizations and relationships don't happen by accident. They happen because they're built intentionally. And
Mm.
so that is, for me, the architecture of trust. But if anybody wants to learn more about me, I would say go to the architectureoftrust.co. That is where you'll find a lot more about that for your business and organization. And there's a new book coming out there, it'll be out in the next 6 weeks or so. That would be a blessing. But also, if they want to read the story of my journey, that
Mm.
is theheartoflegacy.com. And they can get a copy of my free book there that will talk about how do I become a a fearless, focused, and faithful person.
Oh,
And see the
awesome.
journey of how Anchor Point was built and all of that good stuff. That's in there and has lovely application in there for how to do your next best step. And so I encourage you to use both of those resources, and they will connect you to my social media and everything. So
Debbie, I want to catch that fearless, focused, and there's
faithful.
three, and faithful.
Mhm. Mhm.
Wow. And even the name anchor, the anchor, it's
Anchor
like
Point. Mhm.
there was an intention behind it, I'm sure. And that
Mhm.
could be another segment on its own. I'm sure that you potentially can come back here and we can really flesh out a lot of more of what we've just scratched the surface, I feel, and I can listen to you for hours.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your insight, your wisdom, more importantly, bringing across such humility in your journey. And the impact has been probably so significant and far reaching that I don't even think you can comprehend it
Mhm.
yourself. So I just want to acknowledge that too and keep on with the phenomenal work that you are doing. I'm really grateful to have crossed paths with you. I'm going to end our live, but if there's anything that you want to say, please do stay on the live. I normally just do a quick debrief with all my guests. And thank you again. The one thing I do want to say, because you've given all those websites, and again, I'm so immersed in listening to you. Normally, I type things and nuggets as I listen to the guest, but I've been intentional to just be here with you in this moment. I did send you a LinkedIn request. You can accept that. And on the actual event that I posted on LinkedIn, you can go put those handles down
Yep.
and by adding a comment so that everybody can reach you. Thank you, everyone that's been here. For those that are going to listen to the replay, you're in for a treat because there's lots of insight and nuggets to grasp. And so, from my side, I'll see you again next week, same time, different part of the world with somebody maybe not in Texas next week, wherever they might be. And Debbie, thank you from my side for
Yeah.
being here.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say as a closeout?
No, I'm glad to be here with you guys in any way that I can help or come alongside any of your listeners. I would love to do that and get that book. It's a blessing to you. So
Thank
use
you.
it.
Thank you. We'll end the live on that note.